All right, welcome back to Daybreak. As you can see, we're having a very spirited debate here concerning the gender bill that is up for debate in the National Assembly today. And now switching gears away from the legislative process of all of this, sometimes a lot of this can be done outside of the National Assembly floor. We don't always have to go this route of legal or legislative, and particularly to political parties. Honorable Wamalo, I'd asked you this earlier. You didn't answer the question. What can be done from the political? You didn't
give me more time.
Political party.
I wish you.
This is now your
explain.
time.
Okay,
this is now your time, because a lot of times
now,
you see the
what is
political
happening?
parties giving.
What's happening is this: we must look at the Political Parties Act. This is a law that provides the do's and the don'ts of political parties, and we should put a provision that each political party, when it comes to the nomination of candidates, you must ensure that you must put in place the 2/3 gender rule.
Yes.
For instance, if it's in Nairobi, and you know in Nairobi there are about 17 constituencies. So you say the people, the candidates that you are going to give nominations, at least a third must be of the other gender. There's no gender that will go beyond the 2/3. So it should not just be here alone. It must be extended to the political parties, because political parties are the vehicles we use to go to parliament.
Exactly.
Again, when it comes to nominations, nominations are given on a pro rata basis, so that if you want more seats, you are given more to nominate. So when it comes to those nominations, also ensure that the people you are nominating, you should embrace the 2/3 gender rule. So once that cuts across the political parties, and another issue is these elective seats. When it comes to even appointments, I don't think the government has even achieved the 2/3 gender.
No,
you find in some, so the commitment must be shown by the executive that these appointment positions here, we must embrace the 2/3 gender.
Very true, but the general
Absolutely.
practice has been that nominations go to women, elective posts primarily to men. So it sends a message that our nomination seats for women, this tokenism, if you will, Honorable Oluwach, what message does that send?
Obviously, it sends a wrong message. Our political parties need to transit from what used to be the pre-2010 constitution. We've moved on from that, and we have expected so much in terms of what happens in parliaments, but we have not required the same of our political parties. But I think implementing it may require a bit of a mix of two things. One is to make deliberate efforts to ensure that our very messy and sometimes violent nominations process are insulated, especially so that women do not face, because I know how badly she's been through nominations, she knows it. If you do not have a thick skin, and I'm not saying she has one, she's my mom. She's my mom, literally, by the way. You need to have a thick skin, and you need to insulate your ears from sometimes very obscene language, and people call you all manner of names. So either you throw it back, and so that you know, it's a very difficult process, and ballot boxes are kicked, and I don't know how you manage it as a woman. She will probably tell us how you go through that. If we can kind of insulate, take very deliberate efforts to ensure that our women can be able to go these, and I'm not saying unscarred, because politics is also not a game for the faint-hearted, but at least you take away a lot of these violent tendencies. You can walk in, do your thing, sell your policies, then we'll have a few women going through that net. Second thing that I think has to be done is to embrace the fact that, and I know the ODM constitution says this, I don't know about the other political parties.
For Kenya, we also have
nomination process is not always about the universal suffrage. You can nominate by putting people through a process and doing interviews and doing opinion polls and doing a mix of this and that, like we did in Migori. If that kind of approach is used, then you will find some Rosa Buyus being able to go through the process, saying that all things held constant, she can be as good or if not better than the other candidate without putting people through that process. And I know ODM has been trying to do a review, and I know that there is a report that is pending. I hope my party will be able to embrace this and say that in terms of the history, this candidate looks like they've stood with the party. They support the ideals of this. She's a woman of integrity. She has this platform that she runs on. We are giving this to a woman. So we'll probably end up finding that at the end of the process, you probably don't even need to fill any gap. So I think in terms of the things that we can do outside of elections, we need to reconfigure how we do our nominations.
I just want to make this point before I go into political parties, that if Parliament is not constitutionally, if it's not constitutional, what authority does Parliament have to actually hold any other office in this land accountable? If you yourself are not constitutionally constituted, what authority would you have to hold anybody or any other office in this land accountable? But having said that, political parties must actually take the bulk of this implementation. One, each of these political party leaders with a section of women or a group of women, a team of women, have actually consulted with them. And each one of them has actually lent their support to this 2/3 gender rule and stated that they fully support it. The best way that they can show that they support it is to do exactly what Honorable Wamalo was talking about. When it comes to nomination of the parties, when individuals are given tickets to run on their parties, that is where we can actually begin to ensure that this 2/3 gender rule will be implemented. I'm not saying that it's automatic that if you get a party ticket, you will win. Other things come to play because all Kenyans have a right to vote for who they want to vote for. But in places where the parties have mass following, if you actually begin to do affirmative action in those areas, you are giving an opportunity to bring up the women, because over 50%, there's a chance of over 70% that that woman or that candidate will be elected in those areas. So when the political parties do that, they will be bringing up more numbers of women, such that after an election, the number that will be required to be nominated or to be put in those brought up through the special seats will be very few. And hence, the financial implication will also be lowered. So political parties must be the beginning. After the enactment in Parliament, or after the passing of this legislation in Parliament, the political parties now must take that mantle and ensure that we reduce costs, or ensure that we actually fully operationalize this 2/3 rule. Right. It has to start with them. But giving just free, or just saying that you support it and you don't effect it within your political parties, does not help the country. That is where it must start.
And beyond political parties fronting women now in elective posts, for instance, it now goes to the general attitudes that people have towards women leaders, and whether they can and are capable of being leaders in their various constituencies. Will they vote is the question.
I think this has changed quite a bit. If I look at the county of Homa Bay, county of Homa Bay actually has 3 women elected in single constituencies. We have Honorable Millie Odhiambo, we have Honorable Lillian Gogo, we have Honorable Ivo Bara. They've been elected in single constituencies. And we saw in the last parliament what happened in Rift Valley. Women were actually elected. In Muranga today, we also have 3 women elected in single constituencies. So I think when people get an opportunity to actually sell to sell their story and to communicate with the Kenyans, or to communicate with the citizens on what they can do for the citizens, I don't think the citizens will not give the women an opportunity. But because there's so much violence, because there are so many things that work against that woman, the woman does not get an opportunity to expose herself to the people of what type of a leader she'd be able to be to those people. So those are the things that we must correct, so that the woman gets an equal chance like the man.
I think on that note, I want to salute the voters, because we've seen some progressive development. In the last parliament, we only had 16 women members in terms of constituency.
Yes.
In the current parliament, this has increased to 23.
In fact, there were 24, except that the other
I was actually
member
coming that. It was 24 with Honorable Grace Kipchoini, but when Grace Kipchoini, may her soul rest in peace, the people of Baringo brought in a man. Now we have 23. So you can see there's some development. But again, when I ask some women in the village, they say, women are their own enemies. They say, now we've elected so-and-so, they're role models. You're supposed to be a role model to the society. Some of them, they say they drink anyhowly, coming to sleep, I don't know, with the young, whatever, all sorts of stories that I don't want to go into. I'm just explaining what the women said. So it's good to listen, so that those women, particularly in those elective positions, to be role models, to demonstrate, to be models in the society. When you look at the governors, last time we never had governor women. Now we have 3.
Yes.
Honorable Joyce Laboso, we have Honorable Waiguru, Honorable Charity Ngilu. So at least you can see some progress. When it comes to senators, last time we never had any senator woman. Now you can see there's some progress. And this is also in line, the Supreme Court ruling gave an advisory that this issue of 2/3 gender, again, it can be done progressively. So you can see Kenyans, as you clearly put, with more effort, being good role models, demonstrating the capacity and the capability, the Kenyans are ready to vote for them. And by the way, the majority of the voters are women.
There was one of the proposals in Duale's bill, I have to bring this up just here on the back page of The Nation, saying it has proposes special nomination seats for women to be shared among political parties depending on the strength in parliament. So what do we make of that?
Actually, that's what I explained.
Yes.
In numbers.
In terms of the numbers, because that also brings a change in terms of the number that the Constitution would provide for.
Now, the numbers, for example, we are saying that in this Duale bill, we require 21 new nominations or new special seats for the 2/3 gender to be affected or to be impacted. But what this means is that depending on the strength of the political parties after general election, how many members have you brought to parliament? That is what will determine how many of these 21 seats you get.
And also, I think what it really speaks to is that that number 21 is not cast in stone.
Right. It will change.
If for example, more women, and the attitudes change, like Chris is saying, if more women get into parliament and we have 28 or 30, the gap will probably be less.
Much less.
If we go back to sleep, we'll probably end up saying we need 40. So if the number is 20 or 40, we have a majority of Jubilee in parliament now. Assuming that the tables stand and ODM want to have the majority in parliament, then proportionally, it means ODM will put in more of the 20 slots required or of the 40 slots required. So that's what they mean by the strength after the elections.
It will determine the percentage of the seats, the special seats that each party
now will be
gets.
allotted to each of the parties. Okay, on that note, let's take a short break. I understand Kimani Mbugua is at Westgate to give us a traffic update. He is preparing himself as we continue to go through various stories here in the nation. There's a story about Rift Valley MPs having issue with the attack on Deputy President William Ruto. This is page 11. Ruto allies fight back over graft claims. Major rift has emerged among Jubilee MPs from the Rift Valley over remarks by a section of lawmakers that Deputy President William Ruto should be investigated over the maize and fertilizer scandals. They say that these MPs, led by Alfred Keter, are mercenaries, cheap-hired mercenaries who don't have interests of farmers at heart. This, of course, has escalated into something more political. And, of course, it began within the Ministry of Agriculture with CS Kiunjuri being blamed for farmers not being paid on time, a lot of the maize rotting and staying in the stores of the NCPB. Now it's turned political and them saying it's Ruto's fault. What do you make of this back and forth now within Jubilee itself? This is not...
I think this is the problem Kenya has. Anytime we have an issue that we have to grapple with, a serious issue like this, we always forget about the issue and say somebody is being witch-hunted or somebody is being fought or whatever. So we lose the opportunity to correct or to investigate and correct some of these things that affect Kenyans. For example, the maize issue is a real issue. The farmers' cry is a real cry, and we should look into what is happening around the whole maize saga. It does not mean that somebody is being witch-hunted. It does not mean that somebody has been paid to witch-hunt someone. When we begin going like that, then everybody shies away and nothing is ever solved. I think if the maize issue is a big problem affecting Kenyans, because a lot of Kenyans depend on maize. Most of the families depend on maize for their daily subsistence. And apart from that, many Kenyans depend on maize to uplift their economic lives. So what we are saying is, if there's an issue, that issue should be tackled. And this whole problem or of people coming up to say you're fighting so-and-so, it is because of so-and-so, it's because of, you know, we are going to lose the gist of the matter, and we are not going to find out or come up with issues affecting maize, and it's not going to give us an opportunity to correct those issues so that farmers get their worth in terms of the sweat that they put in terms of the money that they put in terms of the aspirations and the hope that they put in when they plow or when they cultivate or when they put all their efforts and mind into planting maize. So I think let us not politicize it. Let us give ourselves an opportunity to find out exactly what's going on with this maize issue and to correct where we can correct so that Kenyans can get value for their effort.
I mean, unfortunately, like you're saying, we come away from the real issues. This has taken a 2022 angle because they're saying this is a push to scuttle the DP's presidential ambitions.
Which is very unfortunate. I mean, the answer to every accountability question touching on, and it can be about anybody, it cannot be that every answer to a probity issue, the answer to it is that these are distractors of the DP and it's 2022. And I said there before, I mean, everything is not about the 2022 and Ruto being president. There are things happening the here and now. Farmers are losing their hard-earned sweat, taking their maize to the silos, and then we have unscrupulous business people coming in to say that I have done 200, 400,000 bags, something that is completely ridiculous. So we must answer the accountability question here. Are there gaps in the way we are managing our maize issue? Are there issues that touch on financial impropriety? Are there issues that then go back to the taxpayers? Because each time these issues come up, I have seen 2 billion, 1-point-something billion. This money is coming from me and you, our taxpayer. So not only are the farmers suffering, but the taxpayer each time has to plug in order to do this. Then is the deputy president having some responsibility here? If those questions are there, he ought to be investigated. And not only the deputy president, anybody else. And I saw the president directing the CS for Agriculture, Kinjuri, and I think he gave him an ultimatum. He told him, you either get to the bottom of it or your job goes. So if that is going to touch on the doorstep of the deputy president, the answer cannot be about 2022. The simple thing for him to do is to come up and say, look, I have nothing to do with this. Same thing about audit. When they said, let's do a lifestyle audit, you cannot answer this by saying 2022. Right. Just come up with the list of, this is how I got Weston, this is how I got that hotel in Mombasa, this is how I got this property. And then the story rests there. So I think we're answering this thing using the wrong premises.
Honorable Wamalwa, as we wrap up.
Thank you very much. I think this is an issue of accountability. First, I want you to know that I represent farmers. Trans Nzoia County is one of the great counties that produce a lot of maize. And my farmers have really suffered. You can imagine a bag of maize going at 2,300, and yet fertilizer goes at 3,000. And when the government imported maize from the famous Mexico, that maize they were buying at 4,500 per bag. But the poor farmer who has struggled, where the government has a responsibility to improve the welfare of the farmer, you're being offered 2,300, which is actually a loss. So because I represent farmers, and when I look at this matter, and I had some MPs talking about this, when you look at the members of parliament who are here, you realize something common across them. All of them are Kalenjins. So it seems it's coming like a Kalenjin affair. I want you to note the kind of the names that are here. And there's that fight. So I have no doubt that the issue of succession, you cannot rule it out, the way Honorable, I think, Boya said. But when the president talked about lifestyle audit, it was meant to cover everybody. And I heard him saying that he's ready to be the first one. So if these MPs have come with some allegations that have evidence, it is actually good that they must adduce that evidence so that the people who have messed up Kenyans, particularly when it comes to the issue of maize, the issue of fertilizer, they must be brought to book. We need actually accountability. But the issue of coming up with the names without substantiation, to me, I'm calling upon the committee in charge to call those MPs, if they have evidence and they can help us to get actually the real culprits. Kenyans, particularly from the Rift Valley side, they'll be very happy. Because I speak today, farmers in my area, they're really suffering. Some of them have not sold their maize. And children will be going to school. They need good Christmas. They need to plow. They need to buy fertilizer. They need to pay school fees. But whatever that came out, now the government cannot offer good prices. I was in the committee last week, and the former minister, Dr. Noah Wekesa, who is a good farmer, I asked him the questions. Are you sure 2,300 per bag is going to be value for money for the farmers? He looks at me, and right now, the same professional farmer, Honorable Noah Wekesa, he's trying to diversify. He's no longer keen in maize. He's moving towards trees, towards sugarcane, and you know very well that Honorable Buya has put it, maize is a critical food element, particularly the Kenyans. So it's important that strategic grain reserve is now called strategic food reserve. It should not just be made through an executive order, but we must also put a legislation in place so that it can have powers, so that it can be able to help how the distribution of fertilizer comes in, and it can be able to streamline how to buy these issues of maize. Because it's also to do with the legislation. It's very weak. It's the executive order that has created the strategic food reserve. It is through that legal notice. We need actually a proper statute that is going to establish that strategic food reserve. And I'm going to draft a bill so that we can move and resolve this problem once and for all.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Honorable Wamalwa. Honorable Buyi, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say that I wish us all good luck and a very good debate this afternoon. And just to appeal to honorable members of parliament that indeed when you put roadblocks to this bill that tries to address equality, you are not putting roadblocks to the female members of parliament who are sitting there now. You're actually putting roadblocks to your daughters, you're putting roadblocks to your sisters, you're putting roadblocks to your friends. So this is an opportunity to actually ensure that we dismantle those roadblocks and give every marginalized or every disadvantaged segment of the society, in this case women, an opportunity to live up to the best or to their fullest potential.
Okay, great.
So let us support the bill and let us ensure that we operationalize this constitution fully before we even begin to talk about referendum or future amendments.
All right, on that call to action, we bring the newspaper review to a close. Thank you so much, Honorable Buyi, Honorable Watch, and Honorable Wamalwa for your time this morning. We're taking a short break here on Daybreak. Much more ahead. Stay with us.